Hello everybody, welcome back. Today is July 23rd and we're doing government and security stories to share with your friends.
Bit of a light week this week because we did Monday and then the cycle.
It was live.
It doesn't have time to repeat.
If you weren't notified, you should go check it out because it was fun.
But what can we do? We can't just make stuff up. Oh wait, that's what these people are doing. But this one's not made up.
We're going to read the made-ups.
This one is, I guess, real, and we know why it happened.
The appeals court has halted the return of net neutrality. The Sixth Circuit Court's temporary stay comes only weeks after the Supreme Court overturned the Chevron defense, weakening the FCC. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, it's not going to work, so why? I think that judge is just being opportunistic to kill it faster. But it probably is going to die.
Can you imagine if you're an ordinary citizen and if you believe a law is unconstitutional, they just roll over you with a truck? There's none of this back and forth like, oh, you don't have the authority to do this.
Well, if you want to
Killdozer reference?
If you want to get rolled over, get incarcerated. Because not only is it a horrible way to live, but you can never really get out of it, right? Probation, that's really just a treadmill. And usually they're going to put you back in. Now, why would they want you back in? What would that accomplish? How could they extract value from that?
The FCC closes the quote-unquote final loopholes that keep prison phone prices exorbitantly high.
$12 was one of the higher-end prices.
For 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you could get mobile before anybody had mobile for those kinds of prices.
I was thinking that as I was reading this, is like this story is really the new American dream, is like find a group that you can exploit and exploit them. And it's like, that's not how civilization should be at all.
Well, the government figured that out a long time ago. They got this game wrapped up. But it's nice to see, I guess. I mean, being in prison, one of the things that you can do is make calls. The interesting thing is it was somehow interstate they were able to get the prices changed. But intrastate, some kind of loophole protected that, which you would think that would be cheaper, right? But no. And also, long distance doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, this was just a relic.
The magic of fiber optic means there's no such thing as long distance.
Well, there is some long distance, and that is the distance between the value that Xbox Game Pass used to be and the value that it is now.
The FTC blasts Microsoft's new degraded Xbox Game Pass standard tier after price increases.
Now, why would the FTC be involved in this? They've got more important things, right? But they do make an interesting point. They said, hey, you remember when we let you have all these mergers? You promised this wasn't going to happen?
It is kind of wild. I also wondered, I was reading this and a couple of other stories, and it made me think, is like as the younger generation sort of takes over more low-level government offices and, you know, they percolate up through things like the FCC and the FTC, are we going to see more of this kind of thing when these companies do something blatantly terrible, as they have always done since time immemorial, that there are enough younger people in government to notice those things and say, hey, wait a minute, this is terrible?
What makes you think that they're any younger on average?
Because the oldest ones have died.
Yeah, eventually they die.
Yeah, but
We're all heading. This is a tough conversation, but eventually all of us are going to die, Ryan.
I know, but it doesn't change the average. Like,
because
the
they're
cycle.
Well, okay. How about people that they're not actually younger, but they have more experience with these newfangled services like Xbox Live? Like we got 50-year-olds running around doing the Xbox Live thing.
Here's the problem. I think technology always moves faster than that die-off rate.
Yeah.
Or just the bureaucratic processes to actually combat it.
In this case, Xbox has been around long enough that it is also middle-aged.
What can we do to accelerate that? Oh, no, better not talk about it. And this is a headline that they keep rolling out, and it's always the same story. But it is something that is disgusting, and there's no reason for it to happen.
The United States Postal Service shared customer postal addresses with Meta, LinkedIn, and Snap. Now, at first I was kind of outraged, but then I read this and I thought, well, this is kind of the postal address correction database. Like, in order to assure delivery of mail, the post office has always let you give it part of an address, and they would say, this is the correct address.
Yeah, but you know what they don't give you in that scenario? An IP address. So, yeah, that's the tracking pixels. Everybody has the pixels, although USPS doesn't anymore. So something good came out of that reporting. And here's an interesting one because, like you said, the people that lead us don't understand these things.
Not a clue.
No idea whatsoever.
We have a lot less lulls about if they did.
Does that stop them or even give them a moment's pause?
No.
No.
U.S. Senate introduces groundbreaking bill to set up legal framework for ethical AI development. The government is finally concerned that deep fakes aren't just, exes and actresses anymore. What a terrible headline. It's just...
They point out that some of the language, this is the Copied Act, which is one of those tortured acronyms, Content Origin Protection and Integrity from Edited and Deepfake Media Act. It sounds like the language is a little too aggressive in this, in terms of like they just get to shut down anything they want.
Isn't that what it all ultimately is? It's like, we don't like this, turn it off.
And how do you prove what's a deep fake? If I create AI risque content and it looks kind of like Scarlett Johansson, who decides? Where's the line? Not that I'm supporting that as like a thing we should be doing, but
just to be clear,
what if it's not Scarlett Johansson, but it's like, oh, this does look an awful lot like the Scarlet Witch from the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, but wouldn't that at this point be based on a real person?
I mean, historically it's not, but okay.
based on a comic book character.
I mean, Tony Stark looked like Tony Stark before,
What's his face played him?
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr. is like...
I think his name is What's His Face.
Oh, sorry. The guy that used to get high a lot.
It's funny. He told Stan Lee that the role saved his life from getting high all the time and blah blah blah. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's a fun story.
Well, I mean, he is deceptive for a living.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a weird thing to try and decide where the line should be. I don't think those people should be doing it.
Speaking of which.
And yeah, this one is just for sure political theater. But I mean, it's a real problem, but there's not going to be any solutions here.
Senators press AT&T and Snowflake for answers on wide-ranging data breach. There's a quote in here, one of the few quotes I can agree with from Vivek Ramaswamy, which is, "This seems like it was easily preventable." And the answer is, yeah, that's the meme where the one astronaut's got the gun on the other astronaut. Always has been.
Will this stop them from storing data in the cloud?
No.
Not even for a little bit. They're probably going to use the same cloud.
It's like, AT&T, why do you have all these billing records going back years? Oh.
And we learned that all of a sudden the press is waking up to the fact that China is testing self-driving vehicles in America. Somehow that's okay, even though we're terrified of letting them in our network equipment. We have literal surveillance machines rolling around. Could that be a problem? Yes, maybe.
U.S. to issue proposed rules limiting Chinese vehicle software in August. And that's the Reuters headline. But it's weird because they're okay with Chinese vehicles. They just would like to know what's going on in the software.
Well, they don't want it being sent back.
Remember the Chinese balloon stories? What a fun time that was.
But think about this. Like, there was nobody stepping up to be like, hey, guys, I'm a little worried that all vehicles have become spy vehicles.
Yeah.
It's okay if it's ours.
Yeah.
Because we know they're already using that for the license plate reading and so forth.
If anybody had a clue, don't you think that one of the features of what we see would be, like, one of the themes of this week's episodes is, if we had a properly working counter surveillance industry and Congress critters were doing their things, they'd be laying the groundwork for building redundant infrastructure. It's like we have stories about the fiber cables that are cut, and it's like, oh, look at that. We've surreptitiously installed redundant fiber cables that no one knew about secretly. Like that sounds like a great clandestine operation. Same with this software. It's just
that's a tough one to do secretly.
I think we could get it done.
I mean, somebody's going to be paying attention to that.
I mean, that would just be like the spycraft and trade work for that. It's like, what are you doing? I was like, this is the transatlantic sewer pipeline.
I mean, someone blew up that gas pipeline secretly, didn't they?
Yeah. That's so weird. We can put it down if we can, but the vehicle software is a thing as well. Like there's a lot of opportunity for clandestine operations. There's a lot of opportunity for the government to invest in open source or competing things. And it's like, this is not interfering with American business because we don't. But what if we do this, or what if we have these standards, or what if we mandate that the structure or the algorithm has to be open and testable? There's no reason that the software on the vehicle needs to know if it's on a real vehicle or a simulated vehicle. And so those are all tools that can be developed to find surreptitious defects in this kind of software, or if it's a spy apparatus or whatever, because the stuff that we found in Huawei network equipment could be described as a surreptitious defect, or deliberately brittle, or something more nefarious.
Well, here's something that we've been promised would never happen. I mean, would never come to this. And even if it did, there's going to be absolute safeguards to prevent it from ever becoming, all that stuff from fiction. And yet, year after year, we see that being shaved away. Maybe shaved is the wrong word. Maybe chopped, sawed, because it's coming away in large chunks.
1/3 of the U.S. military could be robotic by 2039. And then I read the article and thought, 2039, like, what if it's like half?
He said 5 to 10 or 10 to 15 or whatever, but I think it's going to be the shorter end.
Yeah.
Because as well, I can't remember where that story was, but what we're discovering in Ukraine is that signal jamming is a big problem. And the military, without missing a beat, is just like, we'll just let AI do it. And it's like, wait a minute, guys. Didn't we promise we wouldn't do that?
Well, there's some incredibly innovative stuff coming out of there, too. It's just like, here's this tiny little package of electronics that we've strapped onto this giant thing we've made out of cardboard. And we call this the cardboard death machine. And we have 7 million of those in the back of this truck. And it's like, good Lord, this is... I'm impressed that we're able to build such an elaborate thing out of cardboard.
And Project 2025, boy, that's been injected into the mainline narrative in the past 2 weeks, hasn't it? The Atlantic has a little report on it.
The MAGA plan to end free weather reports.
So that you're trying to get around the algorithm.
Yeah.
The headline's very inflammatory. The main thing that I took away from this was that there are people who want to monetize the weather. And that is a terrifying future to me, because what am I supposed to look at on the internet if not constantly looking at weather reports?
I can't imagine there would ever not be some kind of free weather, but also couldn't have imagined that there wouldn't be some kind of free news 5 years ago.
They talked about AccuWeather in particular really wants to be able to monetize their platform. And they said that NOAA reports make it hard for them to do so.
But this is a think tank. This is not, it's people from government, but it's not an actual thing. It may be someday. But if you like this kind of terror, if you like to get into these kinds of things, and you want to, like doom porn, Council on Foreign Relations is the think tank that's whose stuff you want to read. That'll really keep you up at night.
We have a story about doom scrolling later.
The one that keeps me awake at night is the cities and municipal organizations that want to privatize like the codes and the organizations for things. So it's just like the National Plumbing Code has become private, and it's like that doesn't seem reasonable.
So privatize everything and just suck as much profit out of it as we can, and then leave it worse for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, AI is certainly going to be one of those things that we're not allowed to control on our own, right? We're definitely looking at a future where that's going to be locked down. You're going to probably have to have a license to even create it. And one thing that we already can't do is figure out how it works ourselves.
It may soon be legal to jailbreak an AI to expose how it works. This is a proposed exemption to the DMCA. 404 has more reporting. 404 has more reporting about it. The problem with this is that you can't jailbreak your iPhone, a device that you own. If you own the device, you should be able to run arbitrary software on it, which involves jailbreaking it. But that's apparently not okay. But you can jailbreak an AI. If this actually gets added as an exception, but you can't jailbreak your phone, it is not a just world.
Well, it's not. But in this particular instance, they do mention it's like not any normie. It's supposed to be like research people who are able to do so.
Is ridiculous.
Could you just say you're a researcher? Yeah.
Right, yeah. So the idea here is if you go in, and you know how some people have tricked the AI into the bomb making and
The Molotovs.
the
Yeah.
chemical weapons and so forth, that is against the terms of service. So you agree not to do that when you sign up for the AI. And so they're saying, well, we're kind of blocked out of ever studying this just simply by using it, which it's true.
Level 1 Tech's research organization. Go.
You think people just get on the internet and tell lies to the AI?
We could also do Level 1 Tech's private investigations.
Well, no, we cannot. Actually, I don't know what the rules are here in the bluegrass. Maybe we should look into that. But in California, as with many things, you need a license.
Court prohibits California regulators from enforcing private investigator licensing law against anti-spam Crusader. This is insane. California said this guy needed a PI license for investigating spam when people would send him messages that were from spammers, because under California law, he can sue them. Like, he built his whole company around suing companies that send unsolicited email, even when you opt out. And so he would file a lawsuit, find the company responsible for it, get money from them. And they somehow complained enough that California said, oh yeah, you need a PI license for that, which would involve firearms training. And then what was the other? Investigative journalism, arson training, like looking for signs of arson. And he's like, I look for spam.
And it was what, 600 hours or 6,000 hours?
6,000 hours.
Yeah. That's a lot of hours.
Yeah, and then finally he got a court ruling that said, no, this is insane, and a permanent injunction barring the government from bothering him again about that.
That's got to be, that's regulatory capture to make sure that only ex-cops be PIs, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because the 6,000 hours, if you have previous professional experience, guess what counts?
So when cops get kicked off the force for excessive force,
Or when they retire.
they can have another income stream and they don't have to compete against.
Exactly.
Yeah, wow.
Moving over to Europe, we have, as usual, the big tech companies shunning Europe, and Europe not happy about it.
Meta will not offer future multimodal AI models in the European Union, Meta says, because the European Union has clouded exactly what the legal requirements are for them to do that without putting themselves at risk. And for Meta's part in it, they said, all right, we're willing to offer multimodal AI, but tell us what the restrictions are or what we might do to get in trouble that might, cause us to be fined for using someone's data. If someone asks about their tax return or documents or a conversation they had with their grandma, like, what does it look like in terms of what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do? And the EU declined to elaborate.
I think there's also a little bit of, based on your existing laws, we know we can't train on what happens here.
Yeah.
So if we can't train on it, the business model doesn't work. Remember, the Facebook business model ultimately is that you are the product, and they cannot turn the European people into the product under the current laws. So there's no reason to have it there, right? And over in Britain, Rishi Sunak was a massive, massive champion for artificial intelligence. He was basically like, let's just take the gloves off, let them do whatever they got to do. You want to train on the children? We'll bust them in. But the new leader, not so much.
Britain's new government aims to regulate most powerful AI models. It's too much.
Who gets put most powerful? Do they have a tier list somewhere? Is there a flow chart in the lobby?
This read almost like they were terrified of the average British citizen getting access to a powerful AI.
Yeah, they're also afraid of the average British citizen getting access to a knife.
A potato peeler would have been a stronger argument.
So yeah, they are
What
they're
about
looking to shut that down.
What about a novelty master sword that's an envelope opener?
It also could be, I mean, we're not that hip to British politics, but it also just could be like the last guy liked this, so I hate it.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing.
You like indoor plumbing? Well, I've got news for you. I won't stand for indoor plumbing.
And ByteDance, who owns TikTok, if you didn't know that, are also falling afoul of the EU. This is something that already happened, but ByteDance was like, hey guys, we're just a perky little upstart. This doesn't count for us, right?
Reuters says that ByteDance must keep its gatekeeper label, an EU court has said, in a boost for regulators. Because ByteDance is labeled as a gatekeeper, it means that they have specific legal requirements that they have to meet in terms of competition and how their content is formatted and distributed on the platform in the EU.
It blows my mind that, like, ByteDance and Amazon are like, we're not that big of companies. Like, every time I'm like, who do you think you're fooling? Like,
I think when they filed that, the percentages were a little more believable, but in the meantime, they have exploded.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
We weren't that big then. Now we are.
And it's in comparison to the other ones. Apparently, the Euro's not, they didn't catch on to TikTok as quickly as we did. But they're getting there. And Huawei, remember them? They were kicked out of all of the telecom equipment and in various countries. One of them was not Germany, but it seems that Germany is just kind of late to get there.
Huawei is actually expected to take Open RAN step to stay in Germany. This means that Huawei physical equipment will be able to run third-party software, or the third-party software will be audited by other third-party software providers. The specific steps are unclear, but Huawei has said, "Yeah, we're willing to run other people's software. It's fine."
There's in that numbered list. There's definitely one step that's just question marks.
Like the old 4chan screen text.
And
Profit.
so the open, what is Reinstatement radio something, right? That has been a dream of many people. It's like we shouldn't slave these networks to proprietary software and hardware. We should open it up. And guess who's really against that? All the companies that make that hardware. So Huawei's kind of got a gun to their head here. Do you think this might push other people?
Yeah.
Because that's going to be, all of a sudden, Huawei's going to be really attractive, right? It's cheap and it's open.
I always got the impression when Intel was really going hard on their modems that they were also behind Open RAN because they thought that would unseat a little bit of Qualcomm control because it would wrest the hardware from the software model, and maybe Intel would get a little bit more of an insight behind how Qualcomm was managing some of their radio software. But really, this is good for disaster recovery and infrastructure management and everything else. And again, that whole shadow government clandestine operation, if things were functioning as they should, someone would be working on stuff to really harden up our radio and wireless infrastructure.
Instead, those people are working to exploit it. Spy on us. And we talk about regulatory capture and that whole thing. This is not exactly that. This is actually a little bit more blatant than that. This kind of just feels like bribery, doesn't it?
Google's $500 million effort to wreck Microsoft's EU cloud deal failed, report says. This is something we've reported on sporadically over the last couple of years, but Ars Technica finally has a lot of the details on this. Google spent $500 million over a number of years to try to make sure that and it makes sense. Look, if you're inside Google and you're looking at this 10 years ago and you say, we're Google, we're 10 years ahead of everybody. Why do they want to go with Microsoft? They only have something crappy. And then Microsoft builds Azure, and Google still only has Google Compute, which is kind of anemic by default, for customers. It's not fabulous. Microsoft's built something amazing with Azure in comparison, and so you got to look at this and you got to be frustrated. But 10 years ago, Google's like, no, we must stop.
And Norway, they've got this really cool thing where they're monitoring the acoustics under the sea. And they're constantly being able to check, it's like environmental stuff, shipping, and so forth. Somebody apparently not a fan of that and decided to take some steps, but we don't know who.
The mysterious case of Norway's missing undersea cable.
I think I've read this issue before. This is just a re-release.
Isn't this how we knew that the private Titanic submarine, all the undersea cables that they didn't want to talk about, where they were like, there's no survivors.
Oh.
So there's clean cuts and a section of it which weighed tons. I mean, these are beefy cables, repositioned somewhere else. They chopped it and then hauled it.
They chopped and dropped it.
Yeah.
Like compost.
And they tried to do some sleuthing here. The best they came up with was I don't know why they have a picture of a submarine here. The best they could come up with was a trawler, a Russian flagged trawler that had crossed the cable 4 times during the time that they thought it might have been cut. So I think the assumption is they were dropping off and picking up.
Mm.
But who drug it?
Could just be ocean currents, maybe, unless it's really far away.
26 tons or something like that. Could be just a swole whale.
It's actually just the whales entirely. They're trying to start the
How
last
did they
World
get
War.
the clean cut?
They moved it just
They
to
have
mess
scissors.
with them.
Whale scissors. This is something that we haven't seen in quite some time. Line has been going up pretty consistently for a long time now. And I think this could just be normal correction, but people aren't happy about it.
TSMC and Tokyo Electron lead tech sell-off in Asia in trade angst. That's the Bloomberg headline. But basically this is just saying, well, we've seen a lot of sell-offs from these tech companies. Have they hit peak? Is it just sell-off because they've hit peak? Is the AI fever starting to break a little bit?
Do they see massive tariffs on the horizon?
Or global conflict?
Well, they already knew that was coming. And this is a federal police union who, again, is not a governing body. And probably we shouldn't be listening to them because they're really just going to screw us. But they have decided that deepfakes, it's time to do something about them.
The Guardian's headline is Portal Needed for Victims to Report AI Deepfakes, the federal police union says. Why does there need to be a portal to report AI deepfakes? Because, and I quote, police are wasting their time on deepfake reports.
And they have to...
So they just need to dump them somewhere else to keep the paperwork.
But also they say they have to cobble together charges because these things aren't crimes. So basically they're saying, we really want to prosecute you, but you haven't committed a crime. So we have to we have to use existing crimes, but that's really messy. So we need to make new laws so that we can come after you. Now, this goes back to this is Australia, by the way. Same argument from the previous story, right? When does it cross over and become a problem?
It could, I guess, depending on the context, it could technically fall under revenge. I don't want to say the word because we'll get demonetized.
But like, if it's just someone's face and not their body, does that still count?
I mean, you're releasing it with the intent of slandering the reputation, probably.
How do you know my intent?
That would be something a lawyer would have to prove.
You can't have courts presuming that. It's a problem. I don't think they have a good solution for how to solve it. I don't know that there is a solution. It might just be a world where we all have nudes out there.
Whether they're ours or not.
Maybe that's the thing. Like when you turn 18, we make deepfakes of you and just feed them into the AI so that everybody's on a playing field.
The same
level
playing field.
Yeah.
What if you have a neighbor that is complaining that, like, I don't know, there's something, there's trash in your yard or something on a public, like group for your neighborhood or whatever, and then you post a deep fake of, it's like, look, the neighbor's full Karen, and they're just, it's some hilarious thing that you've made of them complaining about the trash, and then they lose their mind. Is that
It's just probably already played out, right?
Yeah, I mean, but that's not currently illegal, but I could see somebody losing their mind and like calling the police about that.
Well, you get charged with false reporting is how that should work.
Yeah.
Well, we had a big phone unlock this week. We had last week reporting that the FBI said they were having trouble getting into it. That
Never
was
true.
For sure a lie.
Yeah, we reported on that at the time that it was probably a lie. We were right.
Turns out that this was a somewhat older Android phone, and it was quite simple, but it begs the question, are there phones out there that are easier than others? And it turns out we got another leak.
404 Media has the headline, What Leaked Docs Show Which Phones Celebrite Can and Cannot Unlock. So that's the Israeli company that we were making a joke about in the last episode of the news. I'm sorry, Links with Friends.
Oh, the tables are paywalled. You can turn off JavaScript. You can go and look at them. I think it was like, iPhone 12 and before, and then some revisions of that. Pixel 9, they can't get into. So if you're...
Pro-criminal tip.
Yeah, if you're up to crime, the Pixel lineup might be for you. But they have a table that'll show you what they can and can't do for those. They got into the one in question pretty easily.
Wasn't it I saw like 40, 45 minutes. Also, now that that's leaked that the Pixel 9 is currently unhackable, do you think that they're now doubling down efforts to fix that?
The eBay price has gone through the roof.
Oh, they've already had teams all over that, yeah. They actually, they pointed out in their advertising material, they claimed that they could get into all modern phones. But it seems like when you drill down into the details, that wasn't true.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
false advertising.
I mean, technically the iPhone or the Pixel 9, that is not a modern phone, not even remotely. That's terrible. It's ancient.
You would presume from the advertisement that would be modern and back.
No.
But maybe that's not the case.
Yeah.
But one thing is for sure, the government wants to get into your phone, and these people want to help them.
The FedScoop says, here's the Israeli firm behind the tech that apparently cracked the shooter's phone and wants more Fed business.
I'm imagining like an agent looking at my phone and it's just, they take so many pictures of flowers in here, and her dog and her cat. There's nothing incriminating on here at all. It's a waste of time.
Well, that's pretty much what they found out about that phone, too. I don't know if there's any dogs and cats. So it turns out, and they say that this is just a coincidence, but it turns out on the same day almost, we get details that they are looking for a FedRAMP sponsorship to be an official federal provider. And they pointed out, it's like, well, listen, we've already got subscriptions with basically every federal agency. Why not make it official?
Neat.
It's like getting married.
Put a ring on it, yeah.
Yeah, it's like getting married after you've lived together for 15 years. You got 6 kids.
It's for the tax benefits.
Patchocalypse.
That's a good one.
And ransomware, we report on ransomware basically every week. It is something that nobody can protect the data. We've seen that. I mean, it's absurd at this point. But it's also getting expensive.
Ransomware continues to pile on costs for critical infrastructure victims.
Median payment at $2.54 million, up from $62,000. It's like fast food. Doesn't make any sense anymore. It's not cost effective. You know what? The ransomware, they should put together a $5 value box.
I like CrowdStrike's answer to that is, can't ransomware it if it's not online.
And speaking of those breaches,
Rite Aid says that breach exposures has exposed sensitive details of 2.2 million customers. Basically, if you use Rite Aid, somebody else has got all that data.
driver's license number, you think that's because of the prescriptions?
No, that is because of the opioid database, which is required by states. So like when you go to buy Sudafed, that nonsense has come home to roost.
I don't think I've ever been asked for.
It'll ask to see if you're 18 and if they have to put in your driver's license, maybe.
Can't they just look at it?
I'm trying to remember how it worked when I worked.
they-
We didn't have to do anything special when I worked at the liquor store. You just put in the date.
They store it now so that when you go to any other place that sells Sudafed, they check your driver's license number to see if you bought more Sudafed somewhere else.
Oh, that was a bad idea, wasn't it? So yeah, just know that when anybody ever cards you, that information is now theirs. And eventually, it's breach forums.
Look older. The key is to look like a hag when you go in public.
But then they're
Follow
gonna
me
think,
for more tips.
They're going to think you're faking it if you go too far with that. You're going to get carded more off. Actually, I think the point of sales won't let you progress until you actually put something in, right? So they have to go through.
The way, again, this is a long time ago, but when I worked at a liquor store, it was literally like you just put in the date. You didn't have to put in the driver's license info. So I don't know. That may have changed though in the last few years.
Well, that's not the only big hack we've had this week. This one is more fun, I guess. I don't feel too as bad about this one.
Hackers claim to have leaked 1.1 terabytes of Disney Slack messages. That's amazing that they were able to get that much data out of Slack. When Slack announced that they were using it to do AI training, it was an awful and convoluted process to export the tenant from Slack.
We get paywalled here, but there was. It's interesting. This Null Bulge group. I think this is the one where they claimed that they were anti-ransomware, right? They're not trying to get anything out of Disney. They said they did this because they hate AI-generated stuff, and they don't want Disney doing that.
So they put the data in a vault, is what you're saying?
No,
The Disney vault?
they leaked it. And that apparently there were discussions in there about like upcoming creative projects and stuff. So presumably
It's just 20 remakes of the same movies. I think they're remaking Tarzan. I think Tarzan was the newest one. Or no, Hercules.
Really?
Yeah, they're redoing
Is it animated?
I think it's a live action one. Because I saw Danny DeVito maybe was signed on for it.
Was he going to be Hercules?
No, he was the trainer in the original animated.
He doesn't look like that. He's not an in shape man.
He's a shape.
This one, does this just seem like the stupidest thing you've ever heard?
Yeah.
Like, I cannot imagine that anybody at AT&T was this stupid. And yet,
The Wired headline is AT&T paid a hacker $370,000 to delete stolen phone records. A security researcher who assisted with the deal said he believes the only copy of the complete data set of call and text records of nearly all AT&T customers has been wiped, but some risks remain. One of those risks is that the data is still out there.
that he made a copy.
He deleted one copy of his case, saved another.
So they actually covered that, and they're like, oh no, this was stored on a cloud server that like a third party had access to, and AT&T had access to, and the hacker had access to, and he promised that was the only copy. What?
He pinky promised. You can't break a pinky promise.
How long till we see this on Breach Forum? Is this next week?
Probably by the time that they see this episode, it's probably already happened.
There's somebody inside the NSA that's like, all right, we got our copy. Yep, it matches. All right, thanks.
And more when you get ransomware, it shows that, with the cloud connectivity and all this stuff, it doesn't just shut down like your payments or your payroll or your key card system. It shuts everything down.
Furniture giant shuts down manufacturing facilities after ransomware attack. This was what, Bassett?
Yeah, Bassett Furniture.
So I feel bad for the workers that had to take an unscheduled holiday. It was July 10th, and it's like, what pieces need to be made for the furniture? Oh,
That's going to be really bad when it's all robot workers. And over in Asia, we have, well, you guessed it, a breach, except this was not the traditional kind of breach.
Wazir X halts withdrawals after losing 230 million, or nearly half of its reserves. Basically, they had 500 million in their token. This is a cryptocurrency exchange. Something happened. There was a security event. They declared it a force majeure, which is like a natural disaster.
Act of God.
Yeah, not an actual act of God. Sorry. And
You don't know that.
Well,
I mean, every time anybody talks to me about God, he needs money. So this would be a great way for him to. That also means force majeure means that contracts are no longer enforceable, which means that clawing your money back from this might be a challenge.
they're still investigating. There's no answer really. There is like something about they required multi-signing wallets, but somehow a falsified wallet got into the chain of wallets that they use for distribution. They were able to catch it before all of the funds were drained, but 50% is not fabulous.
I would not want to lose 50% of anything.
Yeah.
Maybe fat. That would be okay.
Wouldn't that be pretty bad for you?
I think I could afford 50% of my fat.
I don't know.
If I went from, I don't know what my percentage is, but I'm sure I wouldn't go down to dangerous levels if I lost half of it.
Take bets now, chat.
I could see the calculations.
Yeah.
So Cloudflare, they have their finger on the pulse of the internet, and they're constantly looking at it and telling us what's going on, and they've discovered something that probably should surprise you.
Cloudflare reports almost 7% of internet traffic is malicious. This doesn't seem like, I mean, it's going to be an advertisement for Cloudflare, right? But you dig into it and no, it probably is. 7% is an underestimate.
And 40% of that 7%, just DDoS traffic. So a massive, I mean, not a massive amount, but a non-trivial amount of the internet is benefiting no one.
A non-trivial amount of the internet is so badly configured from a security perspective that it can be tricked into sending excessive traffic somewhere else. That's disappointing.
Well, that's got to be the old hardware, right? These days, we make stuff more robust without those kinds of stupid mistakes because we've learned we're standing on the shoulders of giants, right?
Linksys Velop routers send Wi-Fi passwords in plain text to U.S. servers. And compromised routers like these, where someone other than you controls your router, can definitely be used in distributed denial of service attacks.
Now, Linksys says, oh, this is not our fault. This is a third-party system that we've included in our routers that's doing this. But that is your fault.
Yeah, I mean, if the Linksys people had done a basic audit of this, they would have said, wait a minute, we see the password that we just entered in plain text over this Wi-Fi that we're dumping. We shouldn't use this product. But they failed to do that. Ouch.
And we must remember these failures and how these people cannot get these things correct when they tell you that you have to have one. And by law, you must have their horrible spying software.
New camera-based system can detect alcohol impairment in drivers by checking their faces.
What if your face is just like that?
I
What
know.
if you're just kind of weird looking? Like,
Remember the story about the woman who had like the alcohol stomach thing?
Yeah.
And if she got breathalyzed, she got arrested every time.
Yeah.
But it turned out, but there's somebody out there who just looks drunk. Right?
they just look kind of dumb.
What about the
We got some mugshots in the nonsense section. Don't worry.
the comedian Goat Boy? He always looks drunk and high. You know who I'm talking about?
No.
You don't remember Goat Boy from Saturday Night Live? Chat knows what I'm talking about.
Also, this bottle in this picture looks like an L8 bottle. Do you think it would know the difference if it just saw you get in with a glass bottle?
Oh, yeah, the TechSpot press photographer wasn't willing to risk it with a real beer bottle. That's definitely some sort of soda.
Yeah.
Do you think it looks at the bottle? I mean, if you're swigging a bottle, I guess you would be drinking stuff in your car, though, right?
Yeah, because some people drink L8 or the Jones soda comes in glass bottles too.
You know what? Just pop a paper bag over it.
Yeah, and
Then
then
it
they'll
won't know.
really know.
I had to stop once for a Terry stop, and I was drinking a root beer, and they took a long, hard look at my root beer.
Sir, what are you drinking in
Yeah.
there? I think about that every time I take a LaCroix because sometimes people think that's beer. Like even when I've brought it on this, they're like, "Oh, is Krista drinking?" And it's like, "No, I'm just drinking sparkling water."
Modern beer cans have the flamboyant cans like everything
Yeah.
else now. So yeah,
It's hard to tell.
plus they're all flavored and fruity, and it's like it could be
Could
soft,
be either. Yeah.
could be hard. All right, well, we squeezed 41 minutes out of that. I think that was an accomplishment.
Chat, make your best rusting drunk face, and we'll see you in the next one.
Rusting drunk face?
Rusting drunk.
Are we bending, Rodrigo?
No, we're going to get drunk and we're going to do some Rust programming.
Oh boy. Bye.
Fun times.